Ancient and everlasting days, and God of love. The Lord, the great I am, higher than heaven confess. We bow and bless the sacred name, forever blessed. He by himself hath sworn, we on his oath depend. We shall on eagle wings upward to heaven ascend. We shall behold his face, we shall his form adore, and see the wonders of his grace forevermore. There dwells the Lord our King, the Lord our righteousness, triumphant o'er the world and sin, the Prince of Peace. On Zion's sacred height his kingdom he maintains, and glorious with his saints in light forever reigns.
For letting me be with you this morning. Let us begin with prayer. Lord, may the meditations of my heart, and the hearts of each of us be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. My daughter's first name is Ella Grace. When we were considering names for girls, Ella was always a front runner. I'm not sure why, other than I just liked the way it sounded. We played around with various middle names, but hadn't really settled on anything when it came time for her to be born. But once I saw her, I knew her whole first name had to be Ella Grace. Having grown up in church and been to seminary, I thought a lot about grace, what it means, the theology behind it, how to preach about and explain grace, but nothing prepared me for how much more deeply I would understand grace when I became a mother. I loved that newborn baby, still love that almost 12-year-old teenager so completely and without condition. Her name could only ever be Grace to me. The first day of kindergarten, the teacher showed Ella Grace to her desk, and it had a sticker with her name Ella on it. Ella Grace took one look and swiftly corrected the teacher. "My name is Ella Grace." Today, she prefers to go just by Ella, and that's fine. She has always been claiming her own name and identity. Speaking of names, it's a weird time in our culture to be named Karen. I'm sure you've seen or heard the Karen meme. A Karen is a middle-aged white woman with an asymmetrical bob asking to speak to the manager. This Karen is as entitled as she is ignorant. It's come to stand for everything from racism to anti-mask wearing to just simply a misogynistic slight. "Oh, okay, Karen," said with a heavy roll of the eyes. Growing up, I never thought much about my name, one way or the other. It just is what it is. But lately, I've had to think about it a lot. I'm sure if you were a parent, you gave a lot of thought to the names you chose for your children. It feels like a big responsibility, saddling a baby with a name they may carry for the rest of their life. Have you ever thought about your own name very much? What does it mean? Is there any familial significance? Do you like it? Would you ever change your name? What name would you choose? Our lectionary readings bring us two stories today about names. The first, of course, is the story of Abram and Sarai as God creates a covenant with them and renames them Abraham and Sarah. Abram had been walking with God for many, many years, trying to follow where God led them and holding on to the promise of offspring that seemed like it might never come. Their faith was not perfect. We all know the story of how their doubt led them to hurry God's promise along by Abram having a child with their servant Hagar. You can't really blame them for their doubt. They had to walk most of their life of faith without the answers, without proof that God really would fulfill the promise of children. And yet they still walked with God, even through their missteps. In the story we read today, God comes to Abraham with reassurance that Abram will indeed have descendants as numerous as the sands. And the lectionary skips over this bit, but God also wants a mark of this covenant. Abram and all the males must be circumcised to show their commitment to the covenant. As a further sign of the covenant, God changes Abram and Sarai's names to Abraham and Sarah. They are forever changed, body and soul. Our gospel reading is also about names, though it might not seem like it on the surface. Jesus as Messiah and our own name as Christians. The lectionary picks up in the middle of the story, so I want to read a few verses for you that come right before our lesson starts, beginning with verse 27. Jesus went on with his disciples to the village of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. It seems that Jesus wants to know what people are calling him. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps as a measure of how his message is landing and being interpreted. But he seems upset when Peter calls him the Messiah. Messiah, back in those days, carried the implication of royal triumph and the forcible restoration of Israel. In contrast, Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, or the Human One, a name that reaches back to the book of Daniel and carries the implication of suffering and advocating for true justice through sacrifice. When the lectionary picks up, we hear Jesus explaining just this very thing to the disciples, how he will be persecuted and rejected and finally killed. This terrifies Peter, and he wants Jesus to cool it with all this suffering talk, but Jesus won't be tempted. His rebuke, "Get behind me, Satan," calls back to his time in the wilderness when Satan tempted him to take the easy way out, turn these stones to bread, throw himself down and call the angels to protect him, worship Satan and gain all the power and glory. But Jesus didn't then, and he won't now take the easy way out. He is not the Messiah riding in triumphantly on a horse overthrowing Rome. He is the human one riding in on a donkey, suffering and dying to break the chains of redemptive violence and restore true justice. As if Peter wasn't scared enough, Jesus goes on to say that the disciples and anyone who would follow him are also called to suffering for the sake of his message of love and redemption. Anyone who chooses to follow Jesus takes on this name Christian, which simply means follower of Christ or little Christ. In Jesus' day and throughout much of early Christian history, there was a very real possibility of being persecuted and even killed for bearing the name Christian. To take up one's cross, then, is more than just bearing some onerous situation. Too often we hear the expression used as a way of explaining some bad circumstance that a person may have to endure. "Oh, this medical diagnosis is just my cross to bear." Or worse, as defense for telling people to stay in abusive situations. "Having an abusive husband is just your cross to bear, deal with it." But taking up one's cross is not that at all. Christians today, at least Christians in the US, don't face the same threat of persecution and death for our beliefs, but we are still called to bear our crosses. Taking up the cross is being willing to live the truth of God's love, God's thirst for justice and righteousness, God's redemptive promises for this world, no matter the consequences. It is a call to an embodied response to the covenant God makes with humanity. In that way, it is an extension of the covenant with Abraham. Instead of circumcision marking the covenant, those who take the name Christian offer their whole bodies, their very lives. The covenant that Jesus offers does not supersede the covenant with Abraham. Rather, it opens it up to all who would follow Jesus. No longer can only men bear the mark of the covenant. All of us, male, female, trans, non-binary, Gentile, Jew, anyone can take up the cross. The name Christian is freely available to all, but it comes with the cost of a life changed, body and soul. Rather than wealth, Jesus says, blessed are the poor. Rather than influence and prestige, Jesus says, blessed are those who first thirst for righteousness. Rather than power, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. Those who would gain their life must lose it. A Christian life is a life that is not ashamed to stand for the truth of God's all-inclusive love and grace. I am sad to say, though, that sometimes I feel ashamed to bear the name Christian. Now, let me be clear, I am not ashamed of Christ. I am as much a fan of our radical love and justice-filled Jesus as ever. Sometimes the word Christian, though, makes me feel a little bit like the Karen meme. It seems that anytime I hear Christian in the public sphere, it is not a Christianity that I recognize. Too much aligning with political interests rather than the poor and outcast. Too much prosperity gospel and not enough loving thy neighbor. Too much exclusion and not enough grace. On a podcast I love to listen to called Everything Happens, host Kate Bowler was recently asked why, in the face of those things I just mentioned and her own struggle with colon cancer, did she remain a Christian? Her answer is my answer. Because, she says, it wraps me up in a story that is fundamentally about love. At its core, the Christian story is one about the immense, unbounded love that God has for humanity. That love is not easy to understand sometimes. That love is often contrary to the values our culture espouses. That love is certainly not easy to live out, but it is the truest love I know. In my denomination, the United Church of Christ, we have a bit more latitude in the liturgy we say for blessing the elements at communion. And I often like to use these words from a song called All Belong Here by a group out of Chicago called The Many. When you're not sure who you really are, when all you feel is the shape of your scars, when you have more wounds than you can count, open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone. This is your home. Come and remember who you are here. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember who you belong. You belong here. All belong here. At this table, come as you are. Broken and bleeding's okay. At this table, eat and be filled. Come and drink in this grace. This wide open table of love and grace where all belong is a cross I am unashamed to bear. To take up your cross and follow Jesus is a daunting task. So is starting a nation and being a blessing to the world at age 99, but it was through faith that Abraham achieved that. And it is through faith that we can achieve Jesus's command. When we take up the cross, claim the name and identity Christian, we wrap ourselves up in a great and ancient story that is fundamentally about love. All belong here in this story. So take up the cross of love and follow Jesus. Amen.